everyone, and welcome back to the Nova Nihongo podcast. I'm your host Tanner, and today we're going to be talking about how to start a new language. So, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you are familiar with languages or interested in languages or linguistics. So, I want to give a little starter quick guide for some beginners that have never really started a foreign language before on their own. This is specifically for self-studying, not anything to do with schools. We'll talk about that later. That's probably going to be an After Dark episode because there's going to be a lot of ranting to do with talking about schools. So starting a new language can be really exciting and motivating, and there's a lot of curiosity with it, but it can also be kind of overwhelming about not knowing where to start. There's thousands of resources and methods and opinions and influencers and YouTubers and all of these things. They all talk about how to learn and the best methods to learn and how they learn and how they learned this in 30 days or whatever, which is not true. It can be kind of overwhelming, it can be kind of a mess. So today I just wanted to talk about some practical ways to start a new language that can be realistic and sustainable is the main tip. So the first tip I have is choosing a language. Choose a language that you actually care about. So it may sound kind of obvious, but it's really important to pick a language that you have a real connection with. This connection can be culture or music or traveling, movies, family, career goals, anything like that. Languages take a lot of time. It's usually years instead of, days, weeks, months. It usually takes years. It's a longer commitment. So your motivation has to be practical, and you have to have the passion and the drive and the curiosity of how to actually learn the language to keep you going. It's not a steady process sometimes. Sometimes there are ebbs and flows, and you can dip in your progress. You'll grow a lot, but then you'll fail over and over. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. So think of your connection to this language that will keep you going and keep you motivated. So if you're debating between several different languages, ask yourself which one you would want to choose, even if it takes you so long and your progress will be really slow. Whatever you're drawn to first, that's probably going to be your right choice. So for me, Japanese. I wanted to learn Spanish at first, but it was mostly because I had to in the public school system, and the way that they learned in schools was just not great. So that's why I stuck with Japanese years later, and I haven't looked back. 6 years later, I'm still obsessed with Japanese just as much as I was 6 years ago. So it takes a lot of connection, it takes a lot of work and motivation and passion for it. But when you choose the one that is so connected to your heart and to your heritage or your family or whatever other goals that you want to reach, it'll keep you going. So the next tip I have is setting realistic expectations. So one of the biggest mistakes that beginners will make is expecting progress to happen really fast. So you'll see some of the lying YouTube polyglots saying, I was fluent in 7 days, I was fluent in 30 days, or whatever. That's not real. Very much not real. You cannot be fluent in a language in a month. Not possible. You can learn some phrases, you can learn some vocab, you can learn some grammar in a month. Sure. Fluent? No way. Not possible. It'll take years to get fluent and comfortable in this language. It'll take failure. It'll take stress and overwhelm and work, but you'll get there. You'll get there. In the first few weeks of learning a language, you're basically having to train your brain to recognize completely new words and sounds and structures, and it's going to take a while to get used to it. So instead of expecting so much at first, focus on some smaller milestones about, I want to learn how to introduce myself, talk about my hobbies, talk about some basic sentences, talk about what I did yesterday, what I will do tomorrow. Think about some of those smaller steps as opposed to, I want to have a long conversation with a native speaker. Yes, that's a good goal to have later on, but not in your first few days or weeks of learning it. So tip 3 would be to focus on your first few days, your first 30 days specifically. The first month of learning a language will be to build a strong foundation. Get your basic pronunciation and your core vocab and your simple grammar patterns done. Get some listening exposure or watch movies or TV or any of that. Just start getting used to hearing the language and being around it. So, for example, you could do greetings or numbers or questions, basic verbs, sentence structures, learning how to write basic sequences of what you did in a day. This foundation will help you start recognizing the patterns of a language so it becomes much easier the more that you pile on for that language. So, prioritizing study habits over study plans will be tip number 4. So, when I say study habits, I mean simple little routines or 15-minute study sessions a couple days a week, something like that, that will keep you consistent as opposed to perfection. So you want to be consistent and keep going. Yeah, things are going to happen. You're going to miss a day. It's not going to be perfect. That's totally normal and that's totally fine. But you want to keep being consistent with your routines and just, okay, I missed a day. Let's hop back on it. It's going to be all right. And then just keep going from there. Don't dwell on it too much and don't be so hard on yourself. Things happen. Things get crazy with work and family and other priorities, but keep going and go back to why you started the language and why it's so important to you. So, an example could be a simple routine in the morning of we could do 10 minutes of vocabulary like on Quizlet or Anki, whatever flashcards you like. Then on your lunch break, listen to some music, or even like while you work if you're able to do that. I do that all the time, just listening to different languages of music just to be around the language even when I can't actively study. And then maybe before you go to bed or something, do a little bit of a grammar revision on just like one little grammar point or something like that. That seems like a lot to do, but you're getting 30 minutes of practice in a day. And if you do that a couple times a week, it's going to be great. You can also, if you want to do like 10 minutes a day instead of, 30 minutes twice a week, whatever, that's totally fine too. Just do 10 minutes of vocab every morning or every night, and there you go. That's a good start. And then on the weekends, you can dive in more depth when you don't have a lot of work and work through the grammar. It's all up to you and how you want to do it. So a few times a week, 30 minutes, that can be really steady progress. That's the idea. We're not trying to be super fast here. It's just a matter of steady, consistent progress. Number 5, we have avoiding the resource overload trap. So when I say resource overload, I mean there's a trap that you can fall into for collecting too many resources. Or you can pause your language progress by trying to find the perfect resource. I've been guilty of that before. Just like, well, I don't like this textbook or I don't like this thing. Let me just wait and find what I really like and then I'll start. Just start with what you have. There are so many things that you can have. There's apps and textbooks and podcasts and YouTube channels, flashcards, all these different things. It never stops. There's so many different resources. So a good rule you can use is starting with 3 main tools. One of each, leave it there for a little while, and then if it doesn't work, after a week or so of using it, then switch. Don't keep switching every day. So have one structured resource, which is a course or a textbook or tutor, one vocab system, which can be flashcards, physical or digital. You can do Quizlet, you can do Anki, whatever you want to do, and then one source of listening input. When I say one source of listening, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I can only listen to one artist if I'm doing music. It's not like that. But focus on one source of media. You can do music, you can do movies, you can do shows, anime, whatever. Pick one of those to start with, and then as you go, you'll build on it and know what you like. It'll just take a little bit of time to get used to, but you'll be able to build on it. You can always add more later, but early, you want to start with simplicity and then build on it as you go. Next tip, be patient with yourself in the confusing phase. So confusing phase would be after probably the first 2 or so weeks. So first 2 weeks is kind of a honeymoon phase of like, oh, this is so cool. I can learn how to introduce myself and I'm speaking this language. This is so great. I know some sentences and some words. Then there's going to be a little pause right after that where your brain just starts adjusting to the new system and things just start feeling confusing. And you're like, okay, where do I go from here? What do I do now? Like, I've started this, but then there's so much more to learn, and then you'll start getting overwhelmed. It's normal. It's completely normal. So it usually works like this. So you first get a little honeymoon phase of excitement, then you get confused, but then something will click and you'll start getting familiar with the language and seeing how the patterns work, and then it'll just become your understanding. Yes, that takes time, But the key is to keep exposing yourself to the language even when you're confused. Keep listening, it'll start to click over time. Keep listening to it, keep reading, keep working on any of your writing that you want to do, anything like that. It's going to be hard. One of your translators is probably going to be your best friend for a minute, but then soon, the more that you do it, the sooner you'll be like, oh wow, this is starting to make a lot of sense now. It just takes time. And the last tip, tip number 7, know when to pivot or to pause. So pausing and adjusting your goals, adjusting your resources, it's totally okay. It's totally normal. Reassess your goals, reassess anything that you need. Sometimes learners say that, oh, this language isn't as interesting, or my goals have changed, or there's another language that has actually become more relevant for me. And that's completely fine. It doesn't mean that you failed if you, for example, started Spanish and then you moved over to Italian instead. Doesn't mean you failed Spanish, just means, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to work for me anymore. I have a different job opportunity. I have a different friend group that I want to be a part of, or something like that. Any of that is completely valid, and you can change whatever you need to. It's your language journey, and there's nothing wrong with it. You can change whatever language, whatever resource. You can just pause everything if something's gone crazy in your life and you're just like, I can't handle this right now. But then come back to it. Remember what your passion is, and you can always come back to it. So there's a lot of multilingual learners that'll do some multiple languages, multiple sessions of dabbling in different languages before actually settling into a long-term language that you're going to study for a while. I know I did. I've dabbled in Russian, and I would consider Spanish dabbling because I kind of touched on it a little bit after school. And then I'm like, yeah, I could learn Spanish. And now I'm just like, no, I'm okay. And then I've dabbled in German some. German's kind of taking a pause for me at the moment. I've dabbled in Chinese, and I learned that I'm not good at tones. So Chinese and Thai and things, we're probably not going to touch them, and that's going to be all right. But then failing at Spanish, in my opinion, made me find Portuguese. And I absolutely love Portuguese. So me quitting Spanish actually led to me learning one of my favorite languages and meeting some of my favorite people. So it may not be what you expect it to be, but it'll turn out to be really great. So starting a language can be really rewarding, and it'll challenge your brain, connect you with all these different cultures, and open doors to things that you normally would not have been able to access, like new friends or new ways of thinking. So if you're starting a new language, focus on your curiosity, focus on why you want to learn it, and just take small steps to be consistent. So progress can feel really slow at first, but it'll start building on itself, and you'll catch some patterns, and it will take time, but your goal isn't to be perfect. It's just to be consistent and to communicate and discover different ways of thinking and ways of life, different cultures. So it takes work, but it's really worth it, and you'll find ways to enjoy what you set out to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little episode on what's important for language learners and for starting new languages. If you're interested in starting Japanese, for example, I am a Japanese teacher, and my links are below if you want to learn with me, which would be awesome. I'm always looking for more students, and we also have a free Japanese learning community that's also in the description, which would be amazing if you would join. And then we're going to be working later on some Japanese focus episodes because, our podcast is called Nova Nihongo, so we got to talk about some Nihongo here and there. We'll be working on that soon. And thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.